All right, y'all, good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're going to be talking about Chicano culture today with Michael Montenegro and Alex Garcia de Aztlan. We'll go ahead and introduce our first guest speaker. Michael Montenegro is a digital content creator and community historian. He founded the Chicano Culture SB in 2014 when experiencing gentrification. And we've talked about that before, y'all. So his mission is to empower youth and foster community pride in the Santa Barbara area. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that we've, been knowing each other for a few years now, and our circles run into each other in the work that we do. So I really appreciate you volunteering your time to be with us today. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to you so that you can begin your presentation.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And hello, everyone. This is a real honor, and I'm really excited to give y'all a presentation with Chicano Culture SB, with what I do, and a little bit about myself. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen now. All right, everyone, can y'all see my screen? All right, cool, excellent. So let me get this playing. Where's play? One moment, sorry. Well, I'll just go with like this. So Chicano Culture SB, it's presented by me. A little bit by myself. I'm from Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is my hometown. My parents are from Mexico. I'm a dad. I'm 30 years old. Here's a picture of me when I volunteered for the Chicano International Film Festival a couple of years back and that's with me with right down in the middle, that's Moctezuma Esparza, who's the executive producer of Selena. Got to meet him. I did this art show this past summer. I'm more than happy to share a link about that. This is a picture of me, my favorite book, the very, really good academic book called Chicanos in a Changing Society by Dr. Camarillo. It's a really good academic book that goes in detail about the history of Santa Barbara and how the Chicano identity was formed. And then there's also a picture of a protest back in 2015, because I like to get involved in the community and help when I can. But most importantly, let's get into, and also I love cycling and I love Star Wars besides Chicano culture. And I just love anything about Chicano culture, but specifically, I knew I had to specialize in my community because no one was doing it. And first thing, like, what is Chicano culture SB? Like I mentioned, or as mentioned, our mission statement is to empower youth and foster community pride in the Santa Barbara area. And I did this because there was no platform like at the time in 2014 representing the local Chicano community, the Latino community, Latinx, Hispanic, whatever you want to identify. But this is a specific identity that represents Santa Barbara. And it's very distinct. And over the years, it's really nice to look back, and this is what my project has represents. It represents digital archiving, and this is I do like interviews, oral interviews, people over the phone, in person before COVID-19. I make videos. I do this through like Instagram posts on Facebook and Instagram, like I mentioned. I write articles. Then I also do this through events. I also run this event called the Santa Barbara Mural Bike Ride. It's been going on for 5 years, and we visit different murals in the Santa Barbara area, and we talk about the local history and the significance of the murals. And then I do taco tours. Then also I had a barrio cruise this past summer where we got local lowriders and we went a cruise around the city of Santa Barbara. Then, then I also do presentations. I also do like lectures, and I love just talking about history of Santa Barbara from a Chicano perspective. And then another component of Chicano culture SB is spreading awareness. This is a side of like journalism. When stuff goes down that affects our community, whether it's ICE, whether it's, specifically what I like to focus on is gentrification. I like to let my community know. I talk about it. I tell people to let people know, do call actions. I like to repost other folks' stuff, be an ally. Then this is one that kind of overlaps with everything else is how it works as education and entertainment. I do memes, food, talks, stuff that's interesting. And the reason why I started this is like the problem, like I mentioned just recently, is like the lack of representation. Because Santa Barbara is a really important city. When you think about from like a national scope of Chicano history, there's cities like Boyle Heights, East LA, San Antonio, San Francisco, San Diego, etc. But Santa Barbara is very important when it comes to the history, because as y'all know, there's the El Plan de Santa Barbara. And Santa Barbara is a very special place that was able to host such an event. And Santa Barbara is really special with the community leaders from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s today, and you see the eras, and that's why I like to collect. Gentrification, displacement, high rents. Santa Barbara is very expensive. Counter narrative. This is like something that just cringes me. It's when how Santa Barbara is portrayed. That's where it's very like anglicized. It's marketed as the American Riviera, and it very doesn't really mention Mexican. They rather say Spanish. So you see the Eurocentrism in that way, how it's portrayed. Then the tech industry, like Raytheon and other tech companies coming in, and then academic institutions like Santa Barbara City College and UCSB, who keep on calling in students a demand, and they need housing. And that's where students and the working class undocumented and raza, not necessarily conflict, but essentially college students have more money, so the raza gets displaced. So the opportunity, like I mentioned earlier, I do this through events. And before a couple of years back, I used to be more vocal, and used to be more like angry, angry Chicano. But I got tired of that, and one person asked me, like, with this whole gentrification activism that I was doing, they were telling me, he's like, what are you fighting? What are you like fighting for? And this person wouldn't understand where I was coming from, because they just moved into Santa Barbara. They've only been here for like maybe a year. So that's where one thing about my work is that I'm instilling historical consciousness, having people understand why these parks, these murals, this part of the identity, Chicano identity, Chicana, Chicanx identity is important in Santa Barbara historically. And then also empower youth. It's really, it's so rewarding to hear, and I do this all for free. This is a labor of love. And I just mentioned, like, it's always so rewarding when folks on Instagram tell me, and they're like, hey man, I really appreciate your work representing the barrio. I'm talking about Goleta, the east side or west side, and stuff like that. And that's a lot of gratitude that I get. So then I want to kind of give you guys, give y'all, sorry, I want to be inclusive. I want to give y'all kind of like an insight of like my workflow, and then with a recent story that's been developing. So this is the gentrification of Ortega Park. And this is kind of a story that's been developing for a number of years. And I just want to say that like Ortega Park in a nutshell is kind of like the Chicano Park of San Diego. The Ortega Park is like the most Chicano park of Santa Barbara. There was like a look, I have this news clipping from 1981 of a lowrider show hosted by an all mujer lowrider group. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. I'll give you an insight of how the story developed. So back in 2016, I made this video. I just talk about it. And the big issue with it was the city just took out the benches with no regard. They just kind of ripped it out. And this is back in 2016. And this was kind of a part of the fact because there was new development going on just across the street. So for them, this was like a simple solution. And then with me creating this video, it created, I created this social media video. Then from there, it became a news video. And that's where I was fortunate to get interviewed and talk about it more. And from 2016, that's where the Haley Street area started getting developed with tech industry. Some people call it hipster, got more hip. Just also a time check. How much more time do I have, Vital?
You have about another 10 minutes.
Thank you so much. So yeah, this is just kind of like an overview of like the content that I like to post.
Michael, are you going to be sharing a little bit more in depth about a particular, I guess, area of history or culture that you want to dive into more, particular to Santa Barbara?
I guess for me, well, I kind of cover, I guess that's kind of like the end of my presentation. I could show you, here's like the post about the murals and so on. But to answer your question, Beto, can you say your question again, please?
No, just because you're going over a lot of things like in a general sense, which is great, but I'm wondering if then you're going to transition into maybe focusing on more specifically, like something that you really dived into that's cultural or historical for Santa Barbara, just so that we can get more of an idea and flavor as to what Santa Barbara culture is like for Chicana.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. Yeah, I'll be more specific with an example. So, okay, so everyone here has heard of the Chicano moratorium. So let me tell you this. We people of Santa Barbara, the Santa Barbara Junior Brown Berets were there, and we represented. And there's evidence. So whenever you watch the Chicano moratorium documentaries or anything in history of that event, you'll see evidence of our brigade, our troop, at these events. And this is where I was able to interview Juan Pasilla, who was at this event. And this is him as a young man. And this is where the Brown Beret, Junior Brown Berets was led by Ross Castro, who was a community leader. And this is where like kind of a post series where I go and talk about the significance of the Chicano moratorium and the connection between our communities, because we were organized this is the time before the internet. So people were making phone calls, writing letters from Santa Barbara to East LA. And in this post series, I dive into that and what was going on. I talk about the social climate. Then this is him also as a young man. This is a documentary that was produced way back in the day, and he was featured in it. But yeah, this is just kind of I'm just kind of generally going over it, like generally speaking about my stuff. I know time is limited, and I also want to give some time for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I do have a question. I was wondering if you can, for those people that are not from Santa Barbara or too familiar with Santa Barbara, I don't know if you checked out the episode, Michael, with Chavo and talking about the gang injunctions, but just maybe kind of going a little bit, talking about what it's like for Chicanas and Chicanos to live in Santa Barbara. Like you briefly mentioned, saying that they don't like to use the word Mexicans or Chicanos, that they rather, use the word Spanish, whatnot. And even like during fiestas like that, they're so Hispanicized, they're so focusing on European elements rather than on Mexican and or indigenous elements. So just, and then you have the dichotomy, right, between like the super rich in Santa Barbara, and then like, whoa, there's like brown folks that are living, in we do have to deal with gentrification, and then we have to deal with all sorts of things, in Santa Barbara that are just particular to that area, because the income levels, there's just this huge disparity in the income levels, and the constant, I guess, the constant struggle to take up space and to be seen in Santa Barbara as brown folks.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So like, to talk about this experience, and like, firstly, like, I'm not an expert. I'm an avid observer, and I'm also aware of my own personal privilege. I understand, like, I'm ethnically ambiguous. I'm like white passing. Both of my parents from Mexico, so my experience is very different. But from listening to my homies' experiences who get racially profiled by police, friends who got caught up in the prison, the pipeline system, and so on, to talk about, about that experience, just generally speaking, we're kind of like seen as like kind of second class. It's to be Chicano in Santa Barbara, it's like, it's so suppressed. It's like the Santa Barbara, they don't want us. In a way, they really don't want us. They're kind of ashamed of this Chicano identity of ours. I don't know. That's a huge question to talk about the Chicano experience in Santa Barbara. Like, I try to do my best to talk about the experience. If you go to my Instagram page, just go through all the posts, and I try. My aim is to give people that insight of what is Chicano culture of Santa Barbara, and because everyone interprets it differently and experiences it in a different way. And but yes, these types like of social injustices go down in Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is really romanticized. It's a liberal city with its institutions. A lot of people think that there's no bad stuff that goes down. It's like, no, there's stuff like that goes down all the time. It's just like one of the questions I always get asked, and like, oh, does Santa Barbara have a barrio since it's so beautiful? And I like to answer, I'm like, yeah, Santa Barbara does have a barrio, and it's like one of the most beautiful barrios in the world. But you see the same characteristics of different barrios. You see high condensed housing. You see the same imagery, the Guadalupe, the Mexican flag. You see the diversity of different folks, of mestizaje. You see Central Americans and so on. So we do have a barrio, but it's really pretty out here.
And I do just want to share with you all, I did go to UCSB for my undergrad. And so that was the first time that I lived anywhere outside of Santa Maria, which is a farm working community. I grew up in the projects out there. So to go from the projects in Santa Maria to a school like UCSB, where it is on a quarter system, that was something else. And it could be very isolating until you find your own people, right? Your own bubble. But that was really, really something else to be exposed to that. And then to really get to know the city of Santa Barbara and the rich history there of Chicanas and Chicanos. UCSB and Santa Barbara was the birthplace of El Plan de Santa Barbara. And that's one of the main documents that is used and was used by the Chicana Chicano civil rights movement, right? To establish the work that needed to be done. So there's a lot of history there, but also in living in Santa Barbara as a Chicana and as a danzante, the level of racism and classism is incredible. And, to experience what it was to be shunned as an Aztec dancer during fiestas because it wasn't really Spanish enough. Having to go through that during the years that I was living there was an eye opener as well. And that they really are about erasing who we are and trying to whitewash us as much as possible with that whole Spanish culture part of it. And then it always tripped me out, right? Because I see like the Chicanas and Chicanos, a lot of them putting their kids in the flamenco dance, because that's the highlight performance of fiestas, right? So we see all these Chicanas going into flamenco dancing, which is totally Spanish. And I appreciate that, we're trying to connect even with our Spanish heritage and our Spanish culture, but at what expense, right? At the expense of our indigeneity on the land of our indigenous ancestors, right? Or lands that our indigenous ancestors traveled through, because really that's Chumash territory. And so to me, that was just like a trip to live there, right? To have this lens and this very strong identity as an indigenous Chicana, and being in places like Casa de la Raza, another historical place, right, that came out of the civil rights movement, and then trying to navigate through the rest of Santa Barbara, like downtown, and just being treated a certain kind of way. So that was always interesting for me. But I want to open it up to students. So Joanna, you said you have a question. Go for it. Go ahead and unmute.
Oh, should we tell, like, because I come from LA, should we tell students like not to transfer out to UC Santa Barbara, or?
I personally would say to transfer out wherever they want to go and take up. I wouldn't say don't go there because you're going to feel isolated. I would say go there, take up space, and then find the people that you can identify with, while also making friends and networking with people that aren't necessarily from your own ethnic background, but you want to find people that you see yourself in, so you don't feel so isolated and lost. And also, obviously, you want to look for any of the programs like EOP or EOPS. I know they go back and forth between EOP and EOPS. That was like a lifesaver for me, because I didn't know what help was available to me as a single mom at UCSB. And I was the first in my family to go to a university on a quarter system. And I was like drowning. Like my first quarter, I was crying like every day. I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. What am I doing here? Right? Until I found people that I can connect with, and I found programs that were helping me navigate, and then I got my footing and I got used to it. So I would share all that with them as well. Like, look for those resources, look for those people that are going to help you, but don't ever not go somewhere because there aren't a whole lot of people like you. We got to take up space wherever we go. That's my advice. Any other questions? Jasmine, did you want to go ahead and share your comment?
Oh, no, I was just going based off of what you said, like EOPS and EOP. I attended Santa Barbara City College before I transferred to CSUCI, and I was a part of EOPS, which they also had a transitions program, which helped like formerly incarcerated students to jump back into the educational system. And then they also had a program for single mothers as well that helped them like with childcare, as well as like helping them just with their educational needs.
Okay, and then I also saw your other comment, Jasmine, about fiestas and how it's changed a lot. And you know what? I really strongly, I'm strongly assuming that the reason why it has changed to incorporate more Mexican heritage is because there was a lot of backlash. A lot of people started speaking up, like,
Yeah.
what is this about, right? Michael, can you speak to that? Do you know of any of examples or whatnot?
Yeah, I would definitely say with related with fiestas is the mission. The mission is a very controversial symbol and like location. For some people, it's a romantic location to visit for your quinceañera, your wedding, whatever. And for some other people, it's like literally Auschwitz. So it's no need to be like romanticized in their perspective. But what I've observed, and like I'll go at it with them on my page to their page, because they're trying to like really romanticize, like, oh, we've been here for 200 years and look what we've been doing and so on. And like they never want to, like, I don't know, they're trying to like be hip, but they still like are ashamed. They don't want to like really take responsibility. I'm like, dude, if you just take responsibility, the mission, I told them this, I'm like, if you just take responsibility of like how your ancestors did like enslave and cause genocide to the Chumash, like it's that simple, like acknowledge, apologize, be accountable, then move forward. That's like real change. To me, like they're still like being still kind of hip, but they're not taking responsibility. And that's where like my page is, like I keep it real, like I share both sides, and I'm definitely pro indigenous, and I'm all about Chumash land. So like, land first, Chumash land.
And then I do have one other question for you, Michael. Like with the work that you've been doing, and it seems like you've been doing it for a number of years now, what if you could describe Chicano, Santa Barbara, Chicano culture, what would that be? How could you describe it in a way that is distinct from other areas, I guess?
Okay. I would say we have an ocean, we have a beach, we have the luxury of a beach. Not that many barrios have a beach, down the neighborhood. I don't know. It's like when you grow up Chicano in Santa Barbara, you're surrounded by beauty. Not just like architectural, you see like the natural beauty, you see the scenery, and I guess we're just like, I don't know, it's a hard question. I'm sorry, you thumped me there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And I'm just gonna speak from the time that I did live there, right? Like we see, we still see, your recent arrivals that come into Santa Barbara, not all that much because it's so hard to survive in Santa Barbara economically, but you still do see that. And yes, somebody did make a comment like, I didn't know Santa Barbara had projects. Yep, there's projects for sure, and more than one. Okay. And so, and we have to accommodate low income people, because remember what we had a conversation before where it's a beautiful city, but who's keeping it beautiful?
Yeah.
Right? Who's keeping it beautiful? So we do have to think about our immigrant population and meeting their needs, right? Because Santa Barbara needs them too. And then you have those that were born in the area. So we have those Chicanas and Chicanos, and then we have second, third, fourth generation. And then those of us that are really involved in the culture of the Santa Barbara area, we also try our best to connect with the Chumash folks that are there, right? And so there's this intercultural exchange. Traditions are exchanged and ceremonies are exchanged, and you know, we try to stay connected to support each other in what's going on in Santa Barbara as far as neglecting people of color and gentrification, and making it so impossible to afford to live there, even though they need us to be there. Right.
Yeah.
So all of that is going on, but so you have your variety of like straight up culture coming in from Mexico and straight up from Central America, which is like culture to the root of what it is. And then we see the mesh of like the Santa Barbara bougie, you know, with our brown cultures intermixed, just like Chicana and Chicanos, right? But Santa Barbara's like Santa Barbara has like really bougie areas, so you just see like the span, you know, between like hardcore cultura and then it, you know, fusing with that American culture and that bougie culture in Santa Barbara. So you see the whole spectrum.
Yeah, and that's, and like with that mentioned, like, and that's where like I also do tours, and like people ask, one thing like I always hate to hear from people is like, oh, you know, Santa Barbara doesn't have any like Chicano community or like ethnic community, anything like that. Like, and they base this off just visiting downtown in State Street. So that inspired me to be like, dude, ask me. I'll show you the most Chicano side of Santa Barbara. I'll show you placazos that were carved on the concrete in 1971. And so much more stuff. Like, we're there and got to take up space. So anyways, yeah, I'm glad that, I hope you all like my presentation. I really appreciate the opportunity, Profe.
And then, yeah, of course, Michael, of course. Thank you for the work that you're doing. We do have one more question. We'll end it with this question, Michael. Fernando, if you can please unmute yourself. That's a really great question.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, sweet. So I just was like Googling the like city council and stuff like that for Santa Barbara. And I noticed there's two individuals in particular who are Hispanic and their last name's Gutierrez, just like mine. So I was curious, like, do you see or feel like there's actually a development in having more like diverse identities in local government, or do you feel like it's like decreasing, or is there any like talk or transparency behind that?
I don't know if I'm answering your question clearly, but I guess what I'm understanding is like has the diversity helped with Oscar and Kathy? It's like, is that kind of like a question? Like, is the diversity helping out?
Yeah, I guess I'll just kind of like add on to that. So if like we're having like more diverse people who are like joining the local government, like are they actually really implementing things that are focusing within like the communities that are like diverse?
Yeah, very, very good question. Thank you for asking that. Well, that's where I would say yes and no and yes. And that's where like the saying, you know, just because it's your kinfolk doesn't mean it's your people. Like, just because someone has the same Spanish surname that's brown, orientation's different, that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean they have the right interest for the community. Like, literally, like that's where you have to be a real critical thinker and think about these politicians' intentions and who do they have legions, like who are they loyal to? Are they loyal to the real estate industry? Like, I know like several city council members who try to run that were connected to the city council, no, connected to the real estate industry, and they just wanted them there just because they would look good. And that's where like the shallow part of identity politics comes in play. Yeah, like representation is important, and Kathy and Oscar have done good work. But and then there's also Gutierrez from East Side City Council. So there's three. I actually wrote an article about this. There's the most Hispanic, I'm using this term, Hispanic, city council members since Santa Barbara was Mexico. So it's a really special time right now. There's a lot of representation but there's still a lot of gentrification going down. Our parks are being redeveloped, like ridiculous projects. But like, I would just say, just it helps, but you got to still hold them accountable. And yeah, you got to hold them accountable.
Yeah, thank you for being honest with that, Michael, because you're absolutely right. It's like just because they're brown or from an ethnic group, whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to work in the best interest. And a lot of the times they end up becoming tokenized, right? Like, okay, we have
Yeah.
our token brown person, our token black person, our token Asian, and so we're good, right? But then those folks either are just like comfortable and not down making things happen for those communities, or the other people on those boards or councils or whatever it may be just kind of block their every move. So it's really, really difficult. So what needs to happen is that people that are woke, regardless of ethnic background, as long as they're looking out for the communities that are struggling the most, that they get in there at numbers where they now have the majority, right? So that when it comes down to a vote, nobody's blocking them. So you have to be really strategic about stuff like that. But Michael, I was just gonna ask you, like, just from you living there, what would you guess would be the percentage of quote unquote Hispanics that live in Santa Barbara? Like of all the races that live there, what would you say the demographics of raza would be in Santa Barbara?
So the percentage, I believe, we're about like 40%.
Okay.
We're 40% of the city. We're the largest ethnic group. Then it might be even more because most of the statistics that count the consensus, they don't report the undocumented community. So yeah, we're pretty much the majority.
So that means that the city council, the school board, and all the other city, local government should reflect that on as far as leadership and decision makers, right? So that they're looking out for those communities. And we definitely are not even close to that right now. And I do just want to point out that I was just Googling what are the Santa Barbara demographics, and this is what came out of 2020. And you know what is interesting is that it says, as far as ethnicity, white 79.23%. So let's just say, but 79%. Other race 11%. Asian almost 4%. Two or more races 3%. Black or African American 1.5%. Native American not even 1 full percent. Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander 0.01%. Where are the Mexicans? Where are the Chicanos? They're not even listed here, y'all.
Yeah.
That's how hard they work to erase us as if we don't exist in Santa Barbara.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know what group here we're lumped into. I have no idea. It's like we don't even exist.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's the type of BS that we have to endure in Santa Barbara. We raise the children, we clean the yards, we build the building, we do everything, but they don't want to include us. They're ashamed of us.
Exactly.
I don't know
Exactly. So I have a feeling that they're lumping us in with the white population since it came up as like almost 80%. And if so you all should y'all should check your birth certificates, and if not, check your parents' birth certificates if they were born here. But a lot of the times because there's only 4 main races, right? White, Black, Native, and Asian. So where do we fit? So they'll more quickly lump us into the white race than they would into the native race. Okay, again, to cut us off from that identity and make us forget our ancestral tie to the continent, right? So it's really erasing a huge part of who we are. And it's just erasing us altogether, if you ask me. So again, Michael, thank you so much for your presentation. I know that you have to run. Thank you for joining us. Muchísimas gracias. So I'm gonna leave you all with that so you can ponder that a little bit, and just the injustice of erasure of a whole group of people. Go ahead, Jasmine.
Maggie?
Jasmine, were you gonna say something? No, okay, all right. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our next
Later. Thank you, y'all.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We'll go ahead and introduce our next guest speaker. So we have with us Alex Garcia de Aztlan, who grew up in Sun Valley, California. It took him years of doodling on his class notes from elementary to college, then a few years working in the nonprofit sector, and finally as a truck driver to come to accept the fact that he likes art and wants to make art, specifically visual art. Alex started taking this interest more seriously over the last few years when he realized he could use the computer to make anything he could think up of. And those things he thinks up of often revolve around pop culture, politics, history, and Chicano culture. So if you're interested in seeing Emiliano Zapata in the iconic Superman pose, or seeing Malcolm X sipping a cup of coffee that reads "Wake Up," or seeing Frida Kahlo's self-portrait mashed up with Nintendo's Donkey Kong country characters, look up hashtag El Indio Arts. Alex, thank you so much for being with us. I'm gonna go ahead and hand this over to you. Please share the amazing work that you're doing with our class. Go ahead and unmute yourself. I don't think we can hear you yet.
Sorry, I said thanks, and let me go back into the.
We see
No,
your
this is not.
Facebook page instead of your.
Yeah, this is from when we were messaging about the program.
Okay, we see your slide presentation now.
Okay, cool. And then it's the present.
Yes.
Okay.
Want me to?
So like I think based on the last person that we had on, we were hearing a lot about. I think one of the things he put pretty well was instilling historical consciousness. Is that one of his pointers? Um, that and the fact that he's using social media, he's using his Instagram account, and he's using interviews, writing articles, and sharing them online. It sounds to me by what he was presenting that that's his way of um, instilling that consciousness or that awareness of either our culture or our history or both. But doing it in a way that at least at this point generates like um, more results or visibility. I understand that we're Chicanos and Chicanas and Chicanexers, and we have access to like books, we have access to classes, that we have college classes that teach us this stuff. But you know, at the moment anyway, online sort of if it's marketing or if it's sort of bolstering, um, it's the way it's done at least today. It's the new method, and it's been the new method for at least like 10 years. But along the way, I haven't seen a lot of push for either the images of the culture that we come from or the sort of push to get it out there as much as it should be, because we're there, um, but we're not there necessarily online with a strong presence that I think should have. So I give a lot of credit to Mike for doing that, especially out in Santa Barbara, because Beto, I've been out there. You went to school out there. I know what it looks like. It looks like it's kind of like what people think of Hollywood. They think of Hollywood, but they don't think of like the valley behind it, or they don't think of LA, East LA, like to the east. They think of Hollywood, and that's all they see. They just see the glitz and the glamour. Santa Barbara, like it's ironic. It's not even in Hollywood, and yet it still manages to maintain that image. So when people ask or aren't aware that there's barrios out there, it's because the sort of work that he's doing is not that the work hasn't been done, is that at least today anyway, it's not available online. And so, or it is, I mean, it is, and back then it wasn't necessarily. So just putting it out there is, I think, the big thing that I'm applauding him for. Anyway, it lines up with some of the stuff that I'm coming up with recently. We're going through the pandemic. A lot of people are at home. A lot of people are using social media. So again, it lines up with what we're going through today to share the culture that we have. If you're looking at the screen, this is my signature. And if you go through the social networking sites, you can find my stuff at El Indio Arts or the hashtag El Indio Arts. There's a couple links that I threw in there. And so before we get into the sort of stuff that I do and the sort of thing behind Chicano art, I just want to give a couple examples of what art looks like without that Chicano flair. This is artwork that I do look up to, but it's not artwork that I necessarily think has that twist that I put behind my work, and that people that do work mindfully. Some people call that woke, but I'm a little outside of using that term. I think mindful is one way that I think, or conscious is one way to put it, that I think really puts a stronger sort of or a better description of what it is that I'm trying to do, or that people around us or people around me that do similar work want. And I'll give examples of theirs too. But this is that art for art's sake. When you're throwing up images, you have the ability to do art. You do it, and you know, when I was a kid, I would doodle things on a sketch pad or in the middle of class. But I felt eventually, you know, as I got older and I was looking back on it, there wasn't a lot of substance behind it. It was just painting or drawing something pretty and making something look nice. So we have, not that I don't appreciate these artists, but there's, you know, there's Warhol up there, there's Banksy in there somewhere. You know, you got the Obey, and then you have this hipster series where they're putting historical figures in modern hipster sort of appearance. Then you know, Warhol with his Elvis and his Marilyn Monroe's. Again, it's not that I don't appreciate their work. Actually, I try as hard as possible to look like their work, but I try to bring something to it. And a lot of that has to do with my education. It has to do with my, you know, my upbringing, and what that is that it's your culture. So I like to sort of contextualize it in a more modern time, or today's sort of age. And so what Chicano art looks like is Chicano art is Chicano culture, and a lot of Chicano culture, as you guys are in Chicano history class right now, or have been, or in a, hopefully you guys finish up the semester and get a good lesson out of it, that there's a lot of a history of suppression. There's a large history of agitation. There's a large history of uh, it's not being loud necessarily, but it's being expressive. And if you choose that expression to be, you know, the way you dress, if you choose for that expression to be the way, you know, you might put on your eyeliner or your lip liner, if you choose for that expression to be the way you write, like for example, one of them was the way you write the letter S. It was like three lines, and then you connect them, and so it's you know, it's so you're and a lot of it is against the grain, sort of like it's not very popular in the sense that it's on TV and it's everywhere. It's like underground kind of stuff, or it's very communal, it's very grassroots, it's very like community based. It's just stuff you grow up around in, and you sort of emulate, or that I did anyway, and then you start producing it. But so again, there's this aspect of Chicano art that it has to do with the history of being oppressed or being suppressed, and with the sort of reaction that triggers, and that's for it to sort of like start coming out in different ways. And some people might see that as an agitational or subversive. Um, the way I see it is that it's expressive. I mean, you know, you squeeze something hard enough, it's gonna let out somewhere. So Chicano art is a reflection of that culture, and this is one example of it. Just a moment ago with Mike, they went over how, you know, mariachi and Santa Barbara, how they do you know, the mariachi thing, and they do the flamenco dancers. Um, there, I've actually been out there, and I didn't go necessarily to that stuff, but I know that it was out there, and I knew what it was when I saw it. I mean, there's a stronger emphasis on Spanish culture, and Spanish culture has, I mean, you know, it's European, it's white, it's a certain type of white, it's an ethnic white, but it's white nonetheless. And so they have a strong history in Santa Barbara of promoting and emphasizing that, specifically with the mission system, or at least the buildings, you know. But you know, it remains that it emphasizes that aspect of being, you know, a so-called Hispanic. What Chicanos, or what Chicano history has in it, or culture, is sort of this pushing that out, browning it out, actually, instead of whitewashing It makes it bronze, it makes it gold, it makes it brown. This, for example, is a mural out in East LA. It's supposed to be Che. Che very well was, you know, not he was very fair skinned, and so this artist deliberately made him brown in the mural. And there's examples, you know, so there's other examples of that, but I think this is a good example of what Chicano's trying to do, or Chicana, Chicanx, you know, what we're trying to do culturally is sort of get that part of ourselves that has been repressed for so long out, and express, you know, political ideas. Though, so this one has to do with, you know, the grape, the farm worker movement, and what it's like. And you know, I've driven by those fields, and it looks like it's pretty tough work, pretty hard work. And so in this, you have the calavera doing the work, and it's telling you what it is. It's telling you what it's about. Um, that that we do this kind of work, but we're dying for it. I guess, you know, that's essentially the message that I get out of this piece. This is a more recent artist. I look up to it a lot, and sadly, it's something that I can't do. I don't have the skill set to do it, but I think his webpage is down there at the bottom. And if you don't, if that's not the right webpage, you can look it up simply and find him anywhere online. I wish his stuff was more popular. It is popular amongst Chicanos, but it's good stuff. And again, so when I'm looking at this is again, it's that brownness or that indigenous history contemporalized or like brought up to date. So you know, I know we did have educational systems back in the Mexica Empire, the Aztec Empire, but they weren't wearing cap and gowns. You know, they didn't have necessarily goatees. Not all of us anyway, or boots on our feet, or stencils or high heels or whatever. But this artist is trying to relay the message that we, you know, we're here, and we have a history of this appearance, or we have a history of this type of art, and he's putting it out there. Um, Another one, brown is beautiful. This so again, what I'm trying to get at with showing you guys these images, instead of clumping them all together like I did with the other pieces, I'm trying to show you one by one what Chicano art, what I think Chicano art is and what it looks like. And it has a strong sort of like potency to it. It has a strong sort of message or a bent that's either opposing, or that's sort of agitating, or really advocating for something important. And a lot of that has to do with identity. It has to do with class, and it has to do with sort of the oppression that we've been going through, or that we've been in, you know, for what, like 500 some odd years, you know. This is one of my favorite ones. It has a bit of a sense of humor behind it, and it sort of hints at the sort of work that I try to get at too. It's very simplistic, and it tries to, you know, have some humor behind it, but it's also sending a strong. I mean, this is the mother of God, you know, as a karate, you know, expert. You know, it's a very strong sort of thing to put out there, but it's also humorous, and it also has meaning, I think. So my art. I did the warning explicit series, and so again, what I'm trying to do, and what I try to do regularly, is present Chicano history in a contemporary setting, and so, or in a pop fashion. Being that we're in the middle of a pandemic, or hopefully towards the end of it, we have to wear masks. You know, we have our heroes, or one of mine anyway. Of course, Frida Kahlo as an artist, um, Che Guevara as a warrior, essentially. Corky Gonzalez, writer of I Am Joaquin, Toy Purina, who I don't necessarily think would identify as Chicana, but she has that indigenous history that sort of that we sprouted out of too. Of course, Zapata. So having this, you know, seeing a lot of creative masks around during the pandemic, and you know, particularly with the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, I don't know if they were the first that was doing it, but they were putting their messages on their face, and they were getting their message out without even necessarily having to say what it is. That's one of the that I think that's what the beauty of art is. And you know, it would be a mask that says BLM or hashtag BLM, but they're promoting an idea, or they're promoting sort of a, well, I mean, it's not even it's a fact. You know, of course, Black Lives Matter. You know, our lives matter too. And people that said things like that, Zapata, he might have not have necessarily said that Black Lives Matter, but he was saying things of the sort. And you know, you can only imagine if you have a lot of not censorship, but reactionaries going after people that would have the audacity to say something like that today. Imagine back then, you know, what, again, Zapata was saying, what Toy Purina was, I think Toy Purina went out and said, you know, I hate the fathers, I hate the church that's taken up on native land. And, you know, again, what repercussions was she facing for saying so or doing so, putting that out there? It's nice to imagine that if these people were alive today that I look up to and that we look up to in our history books, um, what way they can get around it if they didn't want to suffer necessarily the consequences that they did. I mean, ultimately, most of them ended up dead or end up dead. But sort of the subversive way of being able to state yourself through your fashion is something that we can do today and that we've always done. And so this is what I thought of, or this is the one thing that I had come up with during this time of the pandemic. But we're also online a lot more, so we're making more friends. This is that sort of humorous aspect of the work that I've been doing recently. But it introduces the concept that, you know, had Cesar Chavez, you know, continued to live and Jorge Gonzalez were still alive, Frida Kahlo, Joaquin Murrieta, Pancho Villa, Toy Purina, Zapata, Guevara, you know, all these people, you know, just imagine if they were alive today and they were going through the same thing, the pandemic. They'd reach out wanting to make more friends, wanting to talk to more people and spread their message to gain more alliance or to maybe even grow consciously. Um, I thought it was, you know, imagine one morning waking up and you got a friend request from Zapata. You know, that's something. You know, um, so being at home again because of the pandemic, we're sort of pushed into getting on online social media platforms. And like Mike said when he was presenting earlier, I was hearing what he was saying, and you know, it sucks that he didn't have enough time to like sort of read some of the articles that he'd written or some of the posts and some of the sort of arguments I'm assuming he was getting into between those bougie Santa Barbara people and, you know, the people that he's working with and is a part of. We're trying to speak for ourselves, and they're trying to sort of like cancel us out, or they're trying to act as if we don't exist. Um, the, the time that we're facing right now requires, I think, either images like this online or work from people like Mike to share our experiences, because you know you know we have a very short expansion attention span of recent times. We're online a lot, and so if our presence is hard to see, like when you're there in person or on TV or in movies and stuff, like how much more less is it going to be available online? And so again, it's important to have this out there. Not necessarily my work, but work like people that Mike are doing, just putting it out there in the air or out into the internet, so that, you know, we can latch onto it and share it. You know, tweets. That's another big, you know, considering the environment. You know, we had Trump a little while ago getting pushed, you know, getting pushed out rightfully off of social media platforms. Um, and so it got me to thinking, you know, he's using, you know, he's like anybody does, he uses it to express himself. Not that I agree with a lot of anything really he says, but you know, just imagine again people that we look up to expressing themselves, saying the things that they said, as if they were saying it at that moment. Um, there's a bit of wishful thinking, I think, to this project that I worked on, but there's also, and I didn't mention this earlier, there's an aspect to Chicano art that I noticed that's very two-dimensional, very flat, very direct, and very strong and potent. Um, it has a quality where like it's very realistic. So it's not so far imagined, but it's very like impactful because I think it's straightforward. That's what I was trying to bring with this new stuff that I worked. Actually, a lot of the stuff that I'm presenting is stuff that I worked on specifically for this lecture. So I hope you guys like. I mean, I hope you guys enjoy it. You know, um, I worked on it last night up until this morning, and this is probably the baby of my work recently. Um, but again, the idea is to the sense of realism with the sense of imagination, but it's, again, you're looking at these posts if you didn't know Cesar Chavez passed away or Che Guevara passed away, the assumption is that they're still alive. That's the imaginative part, but it looks very straightforward and real. Now, if these guys were alive and they made friends with each other and started sharing their shit or started sharing their stuff, now we're, this is next level sort of thinking, I think anyway, but it's again in this very flat, direct way that I see anyway when I look at that we are not a minority graffiti art, or not graffiti art, mural, where it's very direct. There's nothing super elaborate about it, but the fact that they browned it out, the fact that they're Che Guevara, I mean, he wasn't even Mexican, but he's popping up in a Mexican neighborhood. They're utilizing and they're browning him, they're bringing him in, they're bringing him into the club basically, this is them, this is imagining them doing it with themselves. I don't think they would necessarily disagree with each other. And so to imagine that they were tweeting and sharing their tweets is the fun that I had making this project for you guys. Frida Kahlo, she likes a smile, she likes laughter, and there's nothing there's nothing prettier than these two sitting over there at the president's chair and sharing it on sharing it online, and then she sharing it too. A bit further is the idea, again, with what's been happening recently. You have the Black Lives Matter movement, and you have people either with it or against it, or sidelining or avoiding it. But I don't think the two people that I'm presenting here would have any sort of disagreement about being able to accomplish your goals, and sharing it with people or sharing it amongst themselves. I mean, of course, it goes without saying, this is Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez. A little bit more on the extreme end, you have Zapata and Malcolm X. These are two, aside from Che, these are two of the figures that I look up to the most and that I read into a lot. And so much of their work, I mean, you literally just have to remove the ethnic identity of the group that they're talking about, and you can just switch them over and they're talking about themselves, or you know what I mean? Like, what I mean to say is that anytime either Zapata mentions about Mexicans or the people or raza, or Malcolm X says anything about Blackness or empowering Black folk or defending themselves, you can easily swap those identities over and it still fits. My point is that these people shared ideas, and if they were alive today, they shared amongst themselves and they try to get those messages out. And vice versa, same thing. Now, I did mention that there's a direct quality behind Chicano art, but I do have an imagination. During the last lecture, I did share this series, and I wanted to share it again because frankly, I like it a lot. And I think it is direct and it is entertaining, but it's also informative.
Just want to let you know that we're at what time? 2:38, 2:39.
Okay, I'll just breeze by them. This one speaks for itself. They're expressing themselves through their clothes, basically, and their heroes. And again, because contemporarily speaking, essential workers, the essentials, this is the biggest thing that I'm the most. I mean, this is the thing that I've been the most proud of for the last couple of years. Putting on display these people that I work with, that I purchase my things from. Valentine's Day was just recently. I got my flowers from them. I got my presents from them, and I get my food from them. And these are people that I think deserve that designation, but aren't necessarily getting it right now, or we're wondering why. And this is my way of I came up with this a few years ago, but I think it pertains to what's going on now. Our street workers, our street vendors, the people that we should be supporting economically with our money and keeping it around where we are with ourselves. I just had some fruit the other day too, man. $6 you could get like a pound worth of fruits and vegetables. I mean, $6. bacon wrapped hot dog. And that does it. Thank you. I know I talked really fast. I'm a little bit nervous, but there's a lot of things that I wanted to share that I didn't, and hopefully we can do it again. But I'm sure Veronica is going to have this recorded and been put out there to share. It's also available, like I told you guys at the beginning, at these links and sites.
Yeah, make sure y'all get those down and follow him so you can see a lot more of his work. And then every time he posts something new, right? A new series. I want to thank you, Alex, for sharing this. And I just love the creativity behind it and just giving it like this whole spin, right?
Yeah, right.
I love it. I love it. So I want to open it up to students who have questions. So go ahead and unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question.
I have a question.
Yep.
Based off like the arts that you have done, has anyone ever told you why you would, like, I guess, express that type of art, or like ask you like a certain message behind the type of art?
Oh yeah. I wanted to share the more like extreme stuff that I do. I've worked on a series where I'm reappropriating something like "Don't Tread on Me," or I haven't done it yet, but "Land and Liberty" or "Freedom Ain't Free." So these are words and these are phrases that are I mean, there's no way around it. They're associated with white nationalism. They're associated with uh, the sort of militancy on behalf of white folk or racist white folk, white supremacists, basically. But these aren't words that haven't been used before by people like us. And so what I did, or what I was trying to do, was to reappropriate it in a way that we're using it, and we're either taking it back, or we're ending that. I'm anyway trying to end that grip that a certain ethnic group or type of people might have on it. So yeah, to answer your question, I do get that a lot, especially when it's a lot more of a potent sort of like image or catchphrase that's not necessarily ours. But so, for example, you have Zapata, and then I put over his head, "Don't tread on us." That generated some kind of negative buzz, but the gist of what I was getting at was that that strong sort of statement is is applicable not only to us, but it's something that he believed in himself. He wasn't a pushover, and he was very adamant about getting his idea out, or his ideas out, and that was through his words and through his speeches. He was known to like rally up the people through his fiery words, and so just to cut it short, yeah, I get that a lot. Sometimes well, it looks more like you're making fun of this person or that person, and I think when I get a negative sort of criticism, I'm not getting the benefit of the doubt from a person, and I think what really I'm looking at or I'm hearing is what that person actually thinks. When somebody, you I'm a sensitive person. I'm a person like anybody else with feelings. And so if somebody were to come at you like, why are you doing that? Or who are you to do that? In other words, giving you a negative or bringing you down. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. But it's telling me that it's the other person that has that issue going on in their mind, that they can't give me the benefit of the doubt that I'm doing something that I feel is right, or that I know is right. So no, I don't try at any point to either belittle or what's the word, misconstrue what a lot of our heroes, both men and women, feel or think or put out there. On the contrary, I'm trying to promote it and sort of uplift, or sort of like put it out there again so that it doesn't get forgotten. Anyway, I know that was a long answer to your question, but yes, I get questions like that all the time. Why are you doing that? For better or worse.
But the whole point of art is to make people uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that's the whole point of it, is to like, if it's not doing that, then there is just art for art's sake, right? To make things look pretty. But like, the true meaning of art as from an artist, right? Who is trying to give meaning to the world around us, right? Through these specific lenses, or to try to kind of make you look at something in a different way, is that's what art is. It's like, well, okay, I never really thought about it like that, right? And so that's the point of art. And so I think you're doing a good job. And every artist has their what's important to artists is that they have freedom of expression. But and so I'm glad that you're sticking to that. I do have a quick question from Maddie. She's asking what programs you use to create your art. Is it Photoshop or something else?
Yeah, no, I'm actually glad she asked that question, because there's two questions that I get most of the time. Is that's actually the first one from other people that are creative and that want to do things like that. Well, what do you like when and I know very well when you look at the work that I put out there, or when I look at it too, it's like I'll think back, what was I thinking, or what did I do to do that? And of course, the other question is, what are you doing, or why are you doing that? But no, yeah, the upshot, or the good news is that I'm not using anything that you guys don't have, or any of y'all don't have. Go on your computer, open up Microsoft Paint, and then go look for filters online. So they might not generate the clear cut, best looking like images, out there as Photoshop would, but you're not paying for it as you would with Photoshop. You're not paying for it as you would with Adobe. There's plenty of programs, there's plenty of online free tools to create what you're thinking in your head, what you're learning, what you're reading, and you want to display visually. I'm assuming she's asking me that because she wants to get into this line of work, or they want to get into art. Yeah, you can totally go the route of learning programs and paying for them. I went the other way. I'm still going the other way as much as I can. I get limited for that reason, but I deliberately use programs and tools that you can only find available for free. And one of the big ones is Paint instead of Photoshop.
Yeah, and you know what, Alex, I do the same thing. Like of being an artist, and how I even reproduce my art on a bunch of stuff like my blankets and face masks and a bunch of other stuff. Like I've never used Photoshop in my life. Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know.
The programs that I use are like whatever I can grab online that are free, and then teach myself how to use them, right? And just for these purposes. But
you take your time with it and you figure it out. Like it's just a matter of time before
it's just like anything else. Like when we have to figure out how to use a different kind of paint, whether it's acrylic or oils, or different kinds of brushes, different kinds of canvases. We're self-taught in a lot of ways.
Right.
And that's one of the beautiful things of our culture, is that because we don't have a lot of expendable money,
resources,
hella creative and finding ways to make it happen.
Yeah, there's a word, I don't know if you've gone over it with your students yet. It's called rascuache.
Yes,
you literally out of trash or out of whatever's around you produce something. You do something with what you have. That's rascuache,
Exactly. So that is rascuache, and our people are really good at making something out of nothing. And my upbringing, just like when I was doodling as a kid, like you were, I didn't have access to art supplies. I didn't know that there are official drawing pencils. I didn't know that for like years and years.
I mean,
so when I was growing up, I would just look for whatever pencil I could find in my house. And usually it was just like a number 2 pencil, and I would have
a Sharpie
from my brothers and sisters. And then I would just find whatever piece of paper and just start sketching. And sometimes those were the paper grocery bags, right, that I would wrap my books in. And then when I didn't have a sharpener, what do? Go into the kitchen drawer and find a knife and start scraping your pencil, because we didn't have sharpeners either. So we find a way to make it happen, and that's the beautiful thing, right?
Yeah, mine was I would bring the pencil down to the concrete floor.
There you go.
And you rub it until like it sharpens out. Yeah.
There you go. And then when I did start buying like professional pencils, then they have the little sandpaper where you can do that for your pencil.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's not the same. Yeah.
And it's the concrete. But so we're out of time. Thank you everybody for hanging in there these extra 5 minutes. Thank you, Alex, for the work that you're doing. I just love how creative it is. And to me, like when I saw like the Zapata and having conversations with Malcolm X, and I would like to see like those conversations continue, right?
No,
Like,
I know. Yeah, that's yeah.
what would happen? What would happen if they did get into a conversation? Hey, did you hear about this? I'm organizing this. And I'm
Yeah,
organizing that.
they'd end up shaking hands. Is what the answer is really. If they really lived, they'd end up shaking hands, joining forces, and bringing down that establishment that's keeping us down today.
That's right. That's right. But you know what? More than anything, y'all, our ancestors live within us. So we make those conversations happen through them, right? Through their legacies. And we continue to network and reach out to other peoples from other groups, because we, like I've been saying over and over again, we have to build solidarity amongst all these different groups, and we have to move forward together, y'all, because it's just not fun living in the kind of society that we're living in right now. It never really has been fun. But those injustices just sometimes become a lot bigger and in your face. And we just need to get together and figure out how to address those issues.
Yeah, no, they become normalized. They become to the point where we think it's supposed to be this way,
It become normalized, and then people start thinking, well, it's not really affecting me. Well, you don't think it is, but it is, right? You don't think it is. And if you all want your little ones to have fresh air and clean drinking water, then I don't know what's going to happen if you all ain't involved in trying to make that a priority, because if you're waiting for somebody to come and do it, it's not going to happen. Right. We got to do it. And so I think that's going to be the common thread and the common messaging that you're going to hear from all of our presenters, is that they're all finding really, really creative ways to make an impact. Right. And you all just find your own way. It doesn't have to be the way that the presenters are sharing, but find your own way. Find your own way. That's the main thing, as long as you're doing something. So again, thank you, Alex. I'm going to invite the students to go ahead and unmute so you can say your goodbyes and your thank yous. And we will see you next week, everyone. Stay safe and healthy.
Appreciate your time and work, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.